Environmental Sensing in the City. Part 2 of 5 based on McCullough 2013, the book Ambient Commons. McCullough's next chapter discusses information and amplifies his earlier warning about masking the real world with information, although previously he called it media. Let's start by considering 3 information scenarios. The first one is light in the east, signaling the coming dawn. This is information from the natural world with no mediation by humans. Second, a crosswalk signal, a flashing picture, possibly with sound for blind or low vision pedestrians. This is a representation mediated by humans. And third, let's consider 5 friends in transit converging on downtown, negotiating a cafe destination at which they'll all meet. There is a great deal of information being mediated by both the friends and the providers of the information services that they're using. These examples represent a spectrum of mediation, from the unmediated experience of nature to the heavily mediated experience of messaging and mapping on smartphones trying to find a suitable meeting place. Mediated signs may illuminate reality or mask it. And we control the degree of mediation. So let's keep mediation in mind as we talk about another aspect of information, which is superabundance or overabundance, a key characteristic of information. An abundance of choice bewilders the chooser. An abundance of choice paralyzes the information consumer. An abundance of choice fragments attention. And the very first famous psychologist, William James, made this statement about the importance of attention in your identity. You are what you attend to. This implies that superabundance or overabundance is a problem, and one way to solve the problem might be to practice attention management. And there are 2 kinds of attention management. First is a good filtering that only lets in what you need. In practice, this can be quite difficult as irrelevant information competes ever more pervasively for your attention. The other kind is mindful abstinence. And not many people can be seen practicing that in public, of course. So it seems inevitable that the overabundance of information or superabundance of information will lead to information overload, an expression coined by Alvin Toffler around 1970. These expressions, distraction, overload, and burnout, according to Google Ngram searches, have been used increasingly in the past half-century in media, at least in media that Google has scoured. Around the same time as Toffler coined the term information overload, the future Nobel Prize winner Herbert Simon posed this provocative question. What does information consume? And you may want to pause the video for a second and think about your answer to that before I show you Herbert Simon's answer to that question, which is attention. Simon went on to say that a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention and creates the need to allocate that attention efficiently among the overabundance of information sources that might consume it. At least a temporary consequence of information overabundance is information overconsumption. An abundance of any formerly scarce resource causes people to consume wherever and whenever they can. And not only is there an increase in the volume of communication, but there's also an increase in the places of communication, the physical locations. For example, you can now hear a business deal being negotiated in the next toilet stall. No discussion of information is complete without asking, what is information? And there are many answers to this question, although none is definitive. Again, you may want to pause the video to come up with your own answer before I list a few. And keep in mind, I'm not trying to privilege these definitions above whatever you may come up with. A sign in a system of signs. An aspect of knowledge. To know personally. To know of through learning. Or true semantic content. And true semantic content is something I'd like you to keep in mind when you see this, that knowledge is often defined as justified true belief, which seems to be a very close cousin to this concept. McCullough seems to settle on semantic content as a kind of information called semantic information. He then moves on to contrast it with things that seem like information but are not semantic. And I should add that semantic here means something like encoded or symbolic. Non-semantic information presents meaning to us without any human encoding. So let's look at an example of that. An actual set of bear tracks on a wilderness trail is called intrinsic information by McCullough, who also calls it environmental information. On the other hand, a picture of those same bear tracks is called semantic information by McCullough, and it could be called mediated information or symbolic information, or it could be called encoded information. The main thing is that we have sort of two categories of information, and they're shown in this picture. McCullough presents this picture of semantic information, which is the upper left rectangle, consisting of representations by humans, overlaying another rectangle, the lower right rectangle, which is intrinsic or environmental information, which consists of unmediated information. And the area of overlap has the potential to be a rich environment, as shown here, or it could be a mask over the physical realm, disguised by situated, tangible, but purely semantic information. Reading, navigating, shopping, and socializing resemble one another more now, and as an unintended consequence, these processes rely less on intrinsic information and more on semantic information. Albert Borgman, the philosopher, said that information can illuminate, transform, or displace reality. And you could say that information is the specific instrument that displaces reality instead of media, as we said in the previous chapter, or I should say as we discussed when we were talking about the previous chapter. So McCullough summarizes this chapter in the following way. The main idea is that not all information is sent. The world itself also informs. And to that, there's the counter-argument of semantic theories of knowledge. The key terms here are overconsumption and intrinsic information. And what has changed are definitions of information. And the catalyst is superabundance or overabundance of information. And the related field is epistemology, the branch of philosophy dealing with knowledge. And the open debate is how to put value on intrinsic information. And that wraps it up for this second of 5 short lectures on the first part of ambient commons. Thanks for your attention.